My name is Rachel Roach. I'm 42 years old, and for 19 years my family called me the paper pusher, the one who never amounted to much. At an airport gate crowded with strangers, my younger brother Garrett threw a boarding pass at my chest. Middle seat. Economy. That's what cheap people ride, he said, loud enough for the whole terminal to hear. You don't get to sit with real family. My parents laughed. My cousins filmed it. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked to the counter, pulled a card from my wallet, and swiped it. 3 seconds later, an alarm chimed. 2 military police stepped out of a side corridor, and a major snapped to attention in front of 200 people.
Colonel Roach.
What none of them knew was that in 90 minutes, I was supposed to stop an attack on Hawaii's power grid. And that laughter was about to cost my brother everything. The bar in my father's basement smelled like WD-40 and stale beer, and I was 9 years old, sitting on the 3rd step down, watching Garrett get handed a wrench he didn't ask for. Watch your brother, my father said. He's got hands for this. Garrett was 5. He held the wrench like it might bite him. He got a round of applause anyway. I want to be fair about this because fairness is something I've built my whole career on, and old habits don't quit at the door. Garrett was not stupid. He was not lazy. But somewhere around the time he learned to read, my parents decided he was going to be something, and somewhere around the same time they decided I already knew what I was. Steady. Reliable. Forgettable. My mother, Eleanor, used to say it like a compliment. Rachel's the practical one. Practical, in our house, was the polite word for not exciting enough to brag about at church. I went into the Air Force at 22. I told them I did logistics. That was true, in the way that saying the ocean is some water is true. For 19 years, I have watched my family build an entire mythology around my brother's ascent, state college dropout, garage startup, and now, at 38, CEO of a company called Terralink Systems that puts his face on tech conference stages, while they filed me, without much thought, under government paperwork. I never corrected them. I couldn't. My actual clearance sits several tiers above the word cleared, and the paperwork I do isn't paperwork so much as it is the difference between a city having lights and a city not having lights. But you can't say that at Thanksgiving. You can't say much of anything at Thanksgiving. Last November, my father's dining room was warm enough that the windows fogged at the corners. 22 people, 3 folding tables jammed together under one tablecloth that didn't quite reach, and Garrett standing at the head of it holding a set of keys like he was about to propose. So, he said, grinning at our parents, Mom, Dad, go look in the driveway. They went. Everyone went, coats half on, into the cold to look at a black Cadillac Escalade, so clean it looked wet under the porch light. My mother put both hands over her mouth. My father just stood there, rubbing the hood with his sleeve like he was checking it was real. $81,000, Garrett said, to no one in particular, to everyone. Fully loaded. 50 years married deserves 50,000 miles of not worrying about the car. Cousin Denny hooped. Someone's phone came out to film it. I stood at the edge of the driveway with my arms crossed against the cold, clapping, because that's what you do. Back inside, dessert half cleared, Garrett came around the table with a small stack of envelopes for the cousins, gift cards, I assumed, the kind of thing you hand out when you're feeling generous and photographed. When he got to me, he paused, patted his jacket pocket like he'd almost forgotten, and pulled out a fold of paper instead. Almost skipped you, he said, and put it in my hand with a little flourish. Grocery store coupons. 6 of them, rubber-banded together. I looked down and saw the expiration date on the top one, April of that year. 7 months expired. Thought you could use these, Garrett said straight-faced, since you're the frugal one, and the table laughed, not cruel exactly, just the easy laugh of people who've decided you're a joke they don't have to feel bad about. My mother laughed loudest. My father looked at his plate. I laughed too. I want you to understand that. I laughed, and I put the coupons in my coat pocket, and I helped clear plates because the woman they saw across that table, a federal desk employee, 42 years old, no husband, no kids, no stories worth telling, was a woman I had spent 19 years constructing on purpose. Colonel Rachel Roach does not attend Thanksgiving. Rachel who does paperwork does. That woman is boring by design. Boring keeps people from asking questions that have answers they're not cleared to hear. That night, home alone, I sat at my kitchen table with the coupon still in my coat and my personal phone buzzing against the wood. Not that phone. Not yet, just a text from my mother. Don't forget, Garrett's planning something big for our anniversary. Be gracious. I remember thinking, I have been gracious for 19 years. I wondered, not for the first time, what it would take for that to run out. I didn't know yet that the answer had an airport gate attached to it. 3 weeks before that flight, my whole family sat around my parents' table again, going over the Hawaii trip like a battle plan, flights, rental cars, who was sharing which condo. Garrett was mid-sentence, tapping the table for emphasis, telling everyone the resort had the best grid reliability in the islands. I checked. My other phone buzzed. Not my personal one. The one with no ringtone, only a vibration pattern I'd know in my sleep, sitting face down beside my water glass where no one would look twice at it. I turned it over under the table, out of habit the way you check a stove is off. Threat assessment updated. Escalation level raised. Target infrastructure. Hawaiian Island power grid. I read it twice. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. My mother's laugh somewhere behind me at something Garrett had said. Hawaii. The exact 4 islands my parents were flying to in 3 weeks, for the 50th anniversary trip my brother wouldn't stop talking about. I set my fork down very carefully, and I did not say a word. The plates were still warm when Garrett stood up and tapped his wine glass with a fork. Okay, everybody, quiet down for a second. He waited until the table settled, until my mother folded her hands under her chin the way she does when she's about to be proud of something. So, Mom, Dad. 50 years. 50 years, Eleanor repeated, like she was tasting the number. I've been sitting on this for 2 months, Garrett said, and I couldn't wait anymore. First class, all of us Honolulu, non-stop. For seasons Hualalai. Ocean View Suites. 10 days. He pulled a folder from his laptop bag, thick, glossy, the kind of paper stock that costs more than regular paper for no reason except to prove it can. I already booked it. It's done. My mother put a hand over her mouth. My father set his fork down and said, Garrett, in the voice he uses when he means this is too much and thank you at the same time. I want to be clear that I was glad for them. 50 years is 50 years, and my parents earned something soft at the end of a hard life. I clapped along with everyone else at that table in Ohio, 3 weeks before a plane full of my relatives would fly directly into the airspace over an island grid I had spent the last 6 days quietly preparing to defend. Garrett went around the table handing out folders. Aunt Carol got hers. Uncle Ray got his. Diane got hers with a kiss on the cheek. Then he got to me, and he didn't hand me a folder. He held up a single printed page, turned it around so I could see it before I even had it in my hands, and read it out loud like an announcer. Rachel, coach, seat 34B. Middle seat, obviously, because somebody's got to hold down the budget option. He grinned at the table. A few people laughed before they even knew what the joke was. And I found you a place 15 miles off the resort. Little motel called the Palm Court. Very reasonable. I figured, he shrugged, still smiling. You're more of a value traveler. Didn't want to put you somewhere you'd feel weird about the price tag. 15 miles, I said. There's a shuttle, I think. He was already looking past me, back toward Diane, done with the subject. My mother nodded along, the way she nods along with everything Garrett says, like his sentences arrive pre-approved. That's thoughtful, actually, she said. Rachel's never been one for fuss. I have never once in my life asked to avoid fuss. I have simply never been offered any. My father looked at his plate. Not at me, not at Garrett. At the potatoes, like they'd suddenly become the most interesting thing in Trumbull County. He didn't say anything. He has never said anything, not at the SUV, not at the coupons, not now. Under the table, my phone buzzed once against my leg. A text, not the encrypted line, just my phone. I didn't look yet. You don't have to take the motel, Garrett added, magnanimous now, refilling his wine. I mean, you could upgrade yourself if you wanted. I just wasn't going to assume that's, in the cards for a GS whatever salary. He doesn't know my actual pay grade. He's never asked. 19 years, and my own brother has built an entire personality around a number he invented for me. It's fine, Garrett, I said. I picked up the printed page, folded it once, and put it in my jacket pocket. Middle seat's fine. I said it flat, the way I answer a subordinate who's told me the server's down, and there's nothing to be gained from raising my voice about it. Something in my calm seemed to annoy him more than anger would have. I watched it land wrong on his face, a small flicker, gone in a second, replaced by the practiced ease of a man used to being the most interesting person in every room he enters. Later, clearing plates, I felt the phone buzz again. This time I looked. It was Kevin, 16, hunched 3 feet away at the end of the table with his hood up and his own phone hidden below the tablecloth like he was defusing something. Sorry about Dad. That was messed up. You're actually cool, BTW. I typed back a single word, thanks, and put the phone away before Eleanor could ask who I was texting at Thanksgiving instead of engaging with the family. Kevin didn't laugh with the rest of them. He never does. I've noticed that for years and never said anything about it, the way you notice a single working streetlight on a dark block and don't mention it out loud in case saying it makes it stop. I was drying the last serving dish when the other phone rang. The one that lives in a drawer, the one that doesn't ring for anything ordinary. I set the dish towel down and answered on the second ring, walking into the hallway, away from the noise of the television and my mother's laugh. Colonel Roach, Maya said, no preamble, the way she always starts when it's real. We're moving the timeline up. Forward commands standing up at Hickam by Thursday. They want you on the ground in Honolulu, not remote. I looked back through the kitchen doorway at my family, at the folders full of Ocean View suites, at the printed page folded in my pocket that said 34B. Understood, I said. I'll be there. The forward command center at Hickam had a smell I'd never gotten used to. Cold recycled air, burnt coffee, the faint ozone of 40 servers running hot in a room built for half that many. Colonel, we've got movement. Maya didn't look up from her screen. 3 rows of analysts sat behind her, headsets on, faces lit blue. Show me. She pulled up a map of Oahu's power grid, red nodes blinking along the substations that fed Honolulu. Someone's probing the SCADA layer. Slow. Patient. Whoever it is knows the architecture. Attribution. Working on it. I studied the screen the way I'd studied 1,000 screens before, not with fear, but with a particular stillness that comes from doing a job long enough that your hands know what to do before your mind catches up. Someone out there had spent months learning how Hawaii kept its lights on. That kind of patience worried me more than speed ever could. Keep pulling the thread, I said. I want a source by Thursday. At 9:40 that night my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter of my rented house in Kapolei. Not the government phone, the other one, the one with my mother's contact photo still set to a picture from 2003. Rachel. It's Mom. Mom. I just wanted to remind you, when we're on the plane, please don't call Garrett every 5 minutes about work things. He needs to relax. 50 years is a big deal for your father and me, and I don't want anything hanging over it. I looked at the dish towel in my hand, folded it in half, folded it again. I won't be calling Garrett, I said. I don't have his number memorized, actually. Rachel. I'll see you at the airport, Mom. I hung up before she could answer, and stood there a moment listening to the refrigerator hum, the kind of small mechanical sound that fills a house when there's nobody in it to fill the silence for you. 2 days later, I drove to my father's place in Waipahu, the same Rambler he'd lived in since retiring from the plant. Tools still hung on pegboard in the garage, though he hadn't built anything in years. He was on the porch with a glass of iced tea, sweating a ring onto the armrest. You look tired, he said. Long week. Your mother says you've got some government desk job. Processing forms. He said it like he was reading off a card, not like he believed it. I sat down across from him. The porch boards creaked under the rocking chair. That's the job, Dad. He was quiet a moment, turning the glass in slow circles. I know it's not, Rachel. He said it low, almost apologetic, like a confession he'd been carrying and finally set down without meaning to. Man who comes by twice a year in a government sedan to drop something off, doesn't wear a badge, doesn't say a word. That's not filing paperwork. My chest did something complicated. Dad. I'm not asking. He cut me off, gentle but final, eyes back on his tea. Whatever it is, it's yours to keep.
I wanted him to say something else.
I wanted him to tell Mom, tell Garrett, stand up at Thanksgiving and say you have no idea who your sister is. He never had. He wasn't going to start now. I let it go, the way I always let it go, and told myself that was its own kind of love, the quiet, useless kind. Driving home, a memory surfaced I hadn't visited in years. I was 17, Garrett 14, and I'd spent 3 weeks building a science fair project on satellite orbital decay, real math, real data pulled from NASA's public feeds. Garrett needed something for his own school project 2 months later. He asked to look at mine for ideas. He turned in almost the same paper with different graphs. Our mother framed his ribbon. Mine went in a drawer. He's got such a gift for this stuff, she told the neighbors. I never said a word. I never did. I thought about that drawer a lot that week. About how long a person can live inside somebody else's definition of them before it stops mattering whether it's true. I decided to go to Hawaii anyway. Not for the anniversary. Not for Garrett's carefully staged photographs. The threat against the grid was real. My team needed a forward presence on the ground, and Hickam was the only place I could run the operation properly. The seat they'd given me, 34B, middle economy, didn't matter. I would have flown in the cargo hold if the mission required it. My phone buzzed again at 11:15 p.m., this time the encrypted line. Maya. Colonel, you need to see this. A file loaded on my screen. A trace report, packet logs, a chain of compromised credentials leading backward through 3 shell contractors before landing on a single name in bold at the bottom of the page. Terralink Systems. I sat very still, reading it twice, the way you read something hoping the second pass will change the words. The second pass didn't change anything. It just made it heavier. I closed the laptop halfway, then opened it again because closing it felt like hiding from it, and I don't hide from things. I pulled up the vendor manifest for Hawaiian Electric's grid control software. There it was, third line down, in the plain gray font of a procurement document that had no idea what it was carrying. Terralink Systems, SCADA integration module, contract renewed 18 months ago. My brother's company. Installed on the exact substations the threat actor was probing.
Mom.
Maya was standing in the doorway of the side office at Hickam, the one with the bad blinds and the coffee maker that only worked if you hit it. You went quiet on the line. I'm here, I said. My voice came out level. I'd had 19 years of practice making my voice come out level. Do you want me to pull the Terralink contract history? Full audit trail. I looked at her for a second longer than I needed to. She was 29, sharp as anything, and she didn't know the name on that contract meant anything to me beyond a line of text. I could have told her to hand it to someone else. I could have recused myself right there, at 6:52 on a Thursday morning, and no one would have blamed me. I thought about Garrett's hand pushing that folded stack of coupons into mine last Thanksgiving, saying, something more your speed, while Aunt Carol laughed into her wine.
Pull it, I said.
Everything. Don't soften it because of who it is.
She didn't ask what I meant by that.
She just nodded and left, and I sat there being 2 people for a minute. The sister who wanted this to be a clerical error. Some subcontractors mistake 3 levels removed from Garrett's desk, and the colonel who already knew it wasn't going to be that simple, because nothing involving Terralink's cost sheets over the last 2 years had been simple. By 9:15, the audit trail was on my screen, and I read it the way I read intercepted chatter. Looking for the seam, the place where the story stopped matching itself. I found it 40 minutes in. A change order from 14 months ago. Terralink had been contracted to run quarterly penetration testing and firmware verification on the substation control modules, a real cost, a real safeguard, priced at $340,000 a year. Someone had downgraded it to an annual check instead of quarterly. Then, 6 months later, annual became as needed. The line item in the budget shrank from $340,000 to $58,000. The savings showed up, almost to the dollar, as a bump in Terralink's operating margin the same quarter. Garrett stood in front of investors and used the word efficiency 4 times in one earnings call. I'd watched that call. Eleanor had sent me the clip with 3 exclamation points. I sat back. The chair creaked, too loud in the quiet room. This wasn't sabotage. I want to be precise about that because precision was the only thing keeping me steady. Garrett hadn't opened a door for anyone on purpose. He just decided a door didn't need to be checked as often because checking it cost money and money made the numbers look worse, and looking worse was the one thing Garrett Roach had never learned how to survive.
Colonel.
Maya again, softer this time. There's a decision point here. I know. If this goes in the report as written, Terralink's contract gets terminated for cause. It'll trigger an SEC disclosure requirement inside 72 hours.
Their stock, she stopped.
You understand what happens to your brother if this is public.
I did.
I understood it the way you understand a fall before you've hit the ground, already, fully, before there's time to brace. Is the finding accurate?
I asked.
Yes, ma'am. Then it goes in the report as written. She looked at me for a moment. Not judging.
Checking.
That's what a good officer does. She checks that the order came from the commander and not from the sister. Understood, she said, and turned to go. Maya.
She stopped.
Nothing gets softened because he shares my last name. If anything, hold it to a harder standard. I don't want anyone saying later that family protected family. Yes, ma'am, she said, and this time there was something almost gentle in it, like she'd just watched me set something down that I'd been carrying a long time. I let myself have exactly one unguarded thought after she left. Somewhere in Ohio, Garrett was probably rehearsing what he'd say to me at the airport gate in 3 weeks, some line about coach class and knowing my place, with absolutely no idea that I already knew more about his company's failures than his own board did. I thought about Diane too, whether she'd seen any of these numbers, whether she was still telling herself the story Garrett told everyone else. I thought about Kevin, 16 and quiet, the only one who'd ever asked me a real question about my work and actually waited for the answer. None of them knew what I was holding. For a few more weeks, only I did. The secure phone rang before I could sit with that thought any longer. Roach, I said. It was General Whitfield, and he didn't waste time on pleasantries. The threat window's accelerating. Intel says they're staging for an attempt within the operational timeframe of your family's travel dates. I need eyes and a decision-maker physically on the island, not running this from Hickam by relay. Sir, if I deploy to Honolulu, I'll be traveling the same day as... I know who you're related to, Colonel. I read the same audit you just filed. You're the best person for this, conflict of interest or not, and we don't have time to find a second best. A pause. You'll be on that flight. Just not in the seat your brother picked for you. I set the phone down slowly. Ma'am, Maya said from the doorway, having caught the last of it. Seat 34B, economy, according to the itinerary your mother forwarded to command by mistake last month. Should I have travel reissue you into forward command channels instead? Leave the seat, I said. Let them see me in it. Just get me the credentials I'll need once we land. I was going to Hawaii after all, on the same day, possibly the same aircraft, as the family who'd handed me a middle seat and a used coupon book, carrying in my head the one piece of information that could end everything Garrett had built. The airport smelled like burnt espresso and jet fuel bleeding in from the tarmac doors. I stood at the edge of the priority lane with my rolling bag, watching my family arrange themselves against the floor-to-ceiling windows for a photo. Everyone squeeze in, Eleanor said, holding her phone at arm's length. Frank, tuck your shirt in. You look like you slept in it. Garrett stood center frame in a navy quarter zip that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, one arm around Eleanor, the other around Diane. Kevin hovered at the edge, glancing back at me twice. I took a step forward. Garrett's eyes found me over his mother's shoulder. Rachel, honey, you're gonna block the light, he said, not unkindly, the way you'd say it to a stranger who'd wandered into a wedding photo. Just over there's fine. I stepped back. The photo clicked. Nobody checked to see if I'd made the frame. I hadn't. A woman near the window, maybe 60, wearing a Notre Dame sweatshirt, caught my eye and gave me the small grimace strangers give when they've witnessed something they shouldn't have. I didn't return it. 22 years of training does that to you. You learn to let your face hold nothing. All right, listen up, Garrett said, louder now, pitched for an audience beyond just us. He clapped his hands once like he was calling a staff meeting to order, then pulled 2 boarding passes from his jacket pocket and pressed one into my hand. Boarding groups. Mom, Dad, Diane, me, we're all in the Polaris cabin, so we'll board with Group 1. Rachel, he paused, and I watched him decide to make it a joke. Don't get lost, okay? Row 34, Seat B.
Should be easy to find.
It's, kind of in the back of the plane. Like the very back. A ripple of laughter went through the aunts and uncles clustered behind him. Denny, my mother's brother, snorted into his coffee. Eleanor didn't laugh, but she didn't stop it either. She adjusted her Fendi sunglasses on top of her head and checked her phone. I felt the phones before I saw them. 2, maybe 3, angled up from the cluster of cousins. Not filming yet. Just ready. Family gatherings had become content, and everyone had learned to keep a lens half-raised, waiting for the moment worth keeping. The gate area behind us had filled with the ordinary churn of a Thursday afternoon flight to Honolulu, a stroller wedged against a pillar, a man doing calf raises against the wall, a gate agent's voice cutting through the PA about a seat change. I folded my boarding pass into my coat pocket, found an open chair near the window, and set my bag between my feet. Ma'am, you can take this one. I don't mind standing. An older man in a Hawaiian print shirt, maybe 70, gestured at the seat beside him he'd been saving with his jacket. Look like your whole party's over there, and you got shuffled out. That's kind of you. I'm fine standing. I sat anyway, because refusing kindness in front of a man who'd offered it freely felt like its own kind of rudeness. Garrett noticed. Of course he noticed. He'd built a career noticing rooms, reading which way the attention was drifting and pulling it back toward himself before it could settle anywhere else. He crossed over, all easy charm, and crouched slightly by my chair like he was checking on a child. You good over here? Not too cheap for you. His voice carried, pitched exactly loud enough for the stranger beside me to hear. A few heads turned. Kevin, standing near his mother, went very still. Ai fine, Garrett. Because I keep telling people, my sister's not big on flash. Practical. That's her whole thing. He straightened up, addressing the small gathered audience now, warming to it. Some people need the champagne and the flatbed. Rachel's happy with a bag of pretzels and an aisle buddy. It's actually kind of admirable. The Notre Dame woman by the window was watching now, arms crossed. The old man beside me had gone quiet in the particular way people go quiet when they're deciding whether to say something. I pulled my boarding pass back out of my pocket, just to have something to do with my hands, and thought about the file sitting encrypted on a server at Hickam, 11 hours of silence coming, a grid vulnerability window closing on a Thursday deadline only 3 people outside my command knew about. I thought about how easy it would be to end this in 4 words and how completely I could not. Show's not that interesting, Garrett, I said instead, keeping my voice level. You can head back to your group. Something flickered across his face, the specific irritation of a man used to laughter following his jokes, not silence. His eyes dropped to the pass still in my hand. You know what? Let's just settle this now. He raised his voice again, and this time it carried across the whole gate area, heads turning from 3 directions. Everybody's watching anyway, right? Might as well. He crossed the last few feet to my chair and snatched the boarding pass straight out of my hand before I could pull it back. He crushed it into a tight ball between his palms, the way you'd kill a bug you didn't want to look at twice. Cheap seats for cheap people, he said, and threw the balled-up paper hard against my chest. It bounced off and dropped to the carpet between us. Get out of the family pictures. I did not bend to pick it up. I stepped over the balled-up paper, walked to the service counter, and set my badge case on the reader. My hand was steady. My hand is always steady. 19 years teaches you that shaking is optional. Ma'am, this is priority processing, the gate agent said, reaching for a scanner she'd used on nobody else that morning. I know, I said. The card in the slot wasn't a boarding pass. It was matte black, government-weight plastic, the kind that doesn't bend and doesn't photograph well, and doesn't say Colonel anywhere a stranger could read it, just a chip, a barcode, and my name. Rachel A. Roach. The agent scanned it. For a second, nothing happened, the way nothing happens in the half-beat before a dropped glass hits the floor. Then the reader chirped 3 times, fast, and turned red. Behind me, I heard Garrett say to no one, "Is this a joke?" 2 transportation security officers who'd been standing by the checkpoint moved before the sound of the reader had finished. Not running. Walking with the specific unhurried speed of people who've done this before, and no panic reads as guilt. A third man in a windbreaker spoke into his collar. The gate agent's face had gone from bored to blank to something closer to alert, and she stepped back from her own counter like it belonged to someone else now.
Colonel Roach.
A woman's voice, clipped, coming through the crowd that had started to gather with their phones already up. Maya Chin crossed the last 10 feet at a fast walk and then stopped 2 feet from me and came to attention. Full attention, chin level, eyes forward. The posture I'd trained into 300 junior officers over 11 years and had never once had aimed at me in front of my own family.
Mom.
Aircraft's fueled and ready at Hickam. General Whitfield wants eyes on before we lose the window. I heard my mother's voice somewhere behind my left shoulder say, "Rachel," in a tone I had never once heard her use with me. Not correcting. Asking. I didn't turn around yet. "Time on target?" I asked Maya. 40 minutes if we leave now. Someone near the rope line was filming. I could see the little red, in my peripheral vision, a stranger's phone held sideways, catching all of it. The badge, the officer standing at attention, my brother's face doing something I'd study later and still not have a word for. I let the phone keep recording. I didn't have 40 minutes to spend wondering who'd upload what. Garrett laughed. It came out wrong, too high. A laugh built for an audience that had stopped finding him funny 30 seconds ago. Okay, very funny, Ratch, nice prank, who'd you pay? The gate agent cut him off without meaning to. She'd pulled up something on her screen, gone a shade paler and said, "Ma'am, I can walk you through the priority lane right now, or the escort can take you around." And she said it to me.
Mom.
Not miss. Not even Rachel. She hadn't called anyone else in line, ma'am, all morning, and Garrett had been standing at that counter for 6 minutes complaining about legroom. My father hadn't moved. He stood with his hand still half raised from where he'd been holding out his own boarding pass, mouth open like a man watching weather change color on the horizon before he understands it's coming for his house. Kevin had his phone down. He was the only one in the group who wasn't recording, wasn't gasping, wasn't performing shock for the people around us. He was just looking at me the way you look at someone you already half knew, waiting for the rest of the picture to catch up to what you'd guessed. I turned to my family for exactly as long as it took to say one true thing. "I have to go." That was all. Not an explanation. Not an apology for 19 years of silence, and not a victory lap either. I didn't have time for either one, and honestly, I didn't want either one. I turned back to Maya before my mother could finish saying my name a second time. "You said aircraft," my mother said, louder now, pushing forward. "What aircraft, Rachel? We have seats together. We have a whole trip planned." I didn't answer that either. Not yet. 10 days in Hawaii, a family trip booked 6 months out, and somewhere under my ribs, I already knew I wasn't going to be sitting in 34B when that plane pulled back from the gate. That was a fight for later. Right now there was only the window Maya had given me, closing. "Sitrep," I said to her. Maya's voice dropped, professional, quiet enough that it wasn't meant for the crowd, but not quite quiet enough, because Garrett had taken one step closer, still trying to find the punchline, still standing close enough to hear. Maya kept her eyes on me, not on him, the way she'd been trained to brief a superior officer and no one else in the room. "Colonel, the confirmation breach is inside Terralink system." Garrett's face went white. Garrett didn't answer. He just stood there with his phone against his ear, listening to someone on the other end, his knuckles going white around the case. Maya kept her eyes forward, waiting on me. I gave her a small nod. "Get me the audit trail printed, hard copy," I mouthed. She turned and walked back toward the 2 men in windbreakers who'd arrived with her. That was when Diane's hand closed around my elbow. "Rachel, 2 minutes." I hadn't heard her come up beside me. She had Garrett's coat draped over one arm like she'd grabbed it out of habit, the way you grab your husband's things at an airport without thinking. Her knuckles were pressed too hard into the fabric.
Not now, Diane. Now.
She pulled, not gently, toward the row of chairs by the window, away from my mother, who was still saying my name in a voice that cracked and dropped like a bad connection. You don't have 2 minutes for me, fine, but you're going to want them. I let her walk me 20 feet, close enough that I could still see Frank standing frozen by the ficus tree, hands jammed in his coat pockets, not moving toward any of us. Far enough that Eleanor's voice became a murmur under the terminal noise. Diane's face wasn't doing what I expected. No performance of loyalty. No wounded wife anger on her husband's behalf. She looked like someone doing math. I'm not here to apologize for him, she said. I want that clear before I say anything else. Then say it. She glanced once toward Garrett, still 15 feet away, still on the phone, his free hand raking through his hair. Terralink missed payroll reserve requirements in March. Then again in May. He's been floating it with a bridge loan from Meridian Capital that comes due in 11 days. If the security story breaks before he refinances, the loan's callable clause triggers and the company folds inside a month. I kept my face still. 19 years of training does that for you. How do you know this? Because I sign our joint tax returns, Rachel, and I stopped being stupid about it about 4 months ago. Her jaw worked. There's an internal investigation already. Board ordered. Started in June, before any of this happened at the counter. 2 auditors flew in from Chicago. He told me it was routine. She said the word like it tasted bad. It's not routine. They're building a file on cost overruns he authorized personally. Security line items. I've seen the emails. Something cold moved through my chest, separate from anything about Hawaii. What emails? The ones where he tells his CFO to reclassify the security budget cuts as infrastructure efficiency gains before the Q3 earnings call. She pulled her phone from her coat pocket, thumb already moving. I have screenshots. I've had them for 6 weeks. I didn't know what to do with them. I looked at that phone like it was a live wire. 6 weeks. She'd been sitting on this through Thanksgiving, through the SUV, through the coupons in my hand, through every dinner where Garrett held court and she poured his wine. Why are you giving them to me now? I said. Not before. Now. Diane's mouth thinned. Because 30 seconds ago, I watched armed men salute my sister-in-law in an airport, and I understood I picked the wrong side of this family 11 years ago. A beat. And because if Terralink goes under with me still on the joint accounts, I go under with it. I have a 16-year-old and a townhouse with 2 names on the mortgage. I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting Kevin's college fund and my own name on a federal filing. There it was. Not remorse. Arithmetic. I respected it more than I wanted to. Send everything to this number, I said, and gave her Maya's direct line, not mine. Not me. Her. It gets logged through proper channels, or it's worthless in an investigation. Diane nodded fast, already typing. I turned back toward the gate area, and that was when I understood how badly this had already slipped past anything I could still shape quietly. An hour ago, I'd told myself I could contain this, handle Garrett's mess the way I'd handled everything else in this family, off to the side, out of daylight. Diane's screenshots meant federal auditors. Federal auditors meant an SEC referral. An SEC referral meant a story with a life of its own, one that no longer cared what I wanted. My phone buzzed against my hip. I almost ignored it, thinking Maya. It wasn't Maya. A text came from a number I didn't recognize, forwarded 3 times before it reached me, a link with a view count already climbing into 6 figures, a video, 17 seconds long, thumbnail frozen on Garrett's arm mid-throw, the balled-up ticket suspended in the air an inch from my chest, and behind me, blurred but unmistakable, 2 men in uniform stepping forward. I stared at the number. Someone in my own family had filmed it. Someone in my own family had posted it. And it was already spreading faster than I could stop it. My phone kept buzzing against my palm. I turned it face up. 41,000 views. Then, before I'd read the caption someone had typed under it, 89,000. I stood in the corridor outside the command center at Hickam, the fluorescent light humming above me, and watched my own face freeze mid-swipe on a 9-second clip. Garrett's voice came out tinny through the phone speaker. You're not sitting with us. You never were. Someone had captioned it. CEO humiliates sister at airport. Turns out she's a colonel. 51,000 shares.
Colonel Roach.
Maya was at the door, her tablet pressed to her chest. You need to see this before you go back in. I've seen enough of it. Not this part. She turned the tablet toward me. A tech reporter's byline, posted 11 minutes ago. Terralink Systems, the company behind the viral airport video, quietly cut cybersecurity spending by 80% last fiscal year, according to 2 former employees. 80%. Not the exact number I'd found buried in the filings, but close enough that someone inside had talked.
Who's the source? I said.
Not us. Not yet. Maya's jaw tightened. But it's out there now, and it's going to connect to the grid investigation whether we release anything or not. I looked past her, through the glass, at the wall of monitors where 4 analysts were already tracking packet traffic out of a substation in Kahului. The real work. The work nobody outside this room would ever know I'd done. And out there, in the part of the world with cell signal and hashtags, my brother's face was being dragged through every feed in the country because of a video that ran 9 seconds. My phone buzzed again.
Mom.
Colonel, you should take that outside, Denny called from his station, not unkindly. We've got 20 minutes before the next data pull anyway. I stepped back into the corridor and let it ring twice before answering, standing very still. Rachel. Her voice came out high, unfamiliar, a register I had never once heard from her in 42 years. Rachel, they're saying his stock is. Garrett just called me crying, actual crying, and the board is, Rachel, are you listening to me?
I'm listening.
You have to say something. A statement. Anything. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you're not whatever they think you are. Just say something to make this stop. Mom, I can't fix this with a phone call. You can't fix it? Your brother built a company from nothing, and it is falling apart on television because of a video, and all you have to do is open your mouth. It's not the video, Mom. It's the 80%. A pause on the line, the first one she'd allowed herself. The 80% what? I didn't answer that. Through the glass behind me, I saw Denny sit up straight, both hands going to his keyboard at once, which was never a good sign. Rachel, please, she said, and something in the please cracked down the middle, a sound I filed away without letting myself feel it yet. There wasn't room. You have to. The alarm went off before she finished the sentence, one flat tone, repeating, red light sweeping the far wall of the command center behind the glass. Mom, I have to go. Rachel, don't you dare hang up on me. I love you. I have to go. I ended the call with her voice still going and pushed back through the door. Maya already had her tablet turned toward me, her face arranged into the particular stillness that meant she was working very hard not to look scared. Grid control just lost visibility on substations 14 through 19, she said. Kahalui's showing anomalous load shedding. It's not a test. General Whitfield's voice came through the overhead speaker a half-second later, calm in a way that meant he was not calm at all. Colonel Roach, this is live. Confirmed intrusion. Maui grid control. Active right now. And Diane, I said because some part of my brain was still holding 2 conversations at once. Anything. 15 minutes ago. Handed 200 pages to an SEC investigator in Scottsdale. Maya didn't look up from her screen. She didn't wait for a subpoena. So Diane had moved first, exactly as she'd told me she would, back at the gate, her hand gripping my forearm harder than she probably realized. I'm not doing this for him. She hadn't been. I set my phone on the console face down, the way you set down something that will keep vibrating whether you look at it or not. Somewhere behind the fear in my mother's voice was the first crack I'd ever heard in 42 years of her certainty that she'd raised her children fairly. That thought would still be there tomorrow. This wouldn't wait. I looked at the clock above the map. 11:47 p.m. Time to cascade failure if we don't isolate it, I said. Denny didn't look up from his screen. 30 minutes. Maybe less. The C-17's ramp sealed with a hydraulic groan I felt in my teeth. Wheels up in 4, the loadmaster called. I strapped into the jump seat across from Maya, who already had her laptop open, screen bright against the cargo bay's dim red lighting. 12 technicians filled the benches behind us, headsets on, running checks. This was my real family. Nobody here had ever handed me expired coupons.
Talk to me, I said.
SCADA intrusion confirmed at Maui Substation 4, Maya said. They're inside the breaker controls. If they trip the wrong sequence, Kahului loses power in under 10 minutes. Cascade risk to 2 more substations after that. Roll back the last Terralink patch. All of it. Rolling back live risks a hard fault. I know. Do it anyway. The engines spooled up beneath us. I opened my own laptop, pulled the topology map Maya's team had built overnight, a spiderweb of red nodes across a green grid, Terralink's fingerprints on everyone. 26 minutes left. 3,000 feet below us, somewhere over the Pacific, my family was buckled into a different aircraft, drinking champagne they hadn't paid attention to me long enough to notice I'd never taken. Seat 34B. Economy, on the flight I'd actually booked myself 3 weeks ago, the one they didn't know about because I'd never planned to use it.
I didn't think about that.
I made myself not think about that.
Colonel.
A technician named Denny turned from his station. They're pivoting, trying to lock us out of Substation 4 before we finish the rollback. Cut their access at the firewall.
Now.
That'll blind us too, for 90 seconds. Do it. The cabin lights flickered as Denny's fingers moved. 90 seconds is a long time when you're guessing whether an attacker on the other end of a fiber line is smarter than you. I counted it in breaths.
4, 5,
6. Access restored, Denny said. We're back in 19 minutes. On the commercial flight, 5 rows into first class, Garrett had his phone on airplane mode and his seatback screen tuned to CNN because that was the only channel with real news instead of the resort ads playing everywhere else. I know because Kevin told me later in detail the way 16-year-olds tell you things when they want you to understand they were paying attention when nobody else was. The anchor's Chiron Red breaking, federal official in viral airport video identified AS Army Colonel. Then my photo. Not the one from any family album, an official one, dress uniform, eagle insignia crisp on my shoulders. Eleanor grabbed Frank's arm so hard he flinched. That's her, she said. That's Rachel. That can't be right, Frank said, and then said nothing else, which Kevin told me was the loudest thing he'd ever heard his grandfather not say. Diane leaned across the aisle to look, and Kevin watched her face change. Not shock, he said. Something closer to arithmetic, like she was already running numbers on what this meant for Garrett's board meetings. Garrett didn't say anything at all. He just stared at the screen like it was showing him a stranger, which I suppose it was. Kevin was the only one who smiled. Small, private, the corner of his mouth. He didn't say anything either. He didn't have to. 12 minutes. Colonel, we've got a problem. Maya's voice had gone flat, the tone she used when the problem was bad enough that panic would only slow her down. Whoever's in there anticipated the rollback. They've queued a manual override on Substation 4's main breaker. If it executes, it's not a data fault. It's physical. They can force the switchgear open and it won't come back up without a truck roll and a repair crew. How long to execute? For minutes, unless we stop it. I looked at the topology map. There was one path in that Terralink's own sloppy patching had left open, the same vulnerability Garrett's cost-cutting had created, the $282,000 a year he'd shaved off to make his security budget look better for the board. I'd hated him for that gap 3 days ago. Now I needed it. Denny, give me a shell into the maintenance interface. The one they never patched. That's the hole that let them in the first place. I know exactly whose hole it is, I said. Give it to me. He gave it to me. I typed the override cancellation myself, hand steady, because 31 years of training does that to you even when your family is 30,000 feet away watching your face on a screen for the first time and calling it news. The command queued. Executed. Held. Override cancelled, Denny said. Breakers locked in safe position. Kick them off Substation 4. Kicking them done. They're out. 8 minutes left on the original clock and we didn't need them. The center screen, The one back at Hickam that Maya had a live feed to, showing our own operations floor 8,000 miles away, flipped from amber to a clean, steady green. Threat neutralized. Nobody in Honolulu would ever know their lights had come within 9 minutes of going out. Nobody in Kahului would post about the blackout. That didn't happen.
That was the job.
That had always been the job. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't get you a toast at Thanksgiving. The kind that doesn't buy an $81,000 Escalade or get a congratulations from your mother. I let myself breathe for the first time in half an hour. Denny was already pulling logs for the after-action report. Somebody 2 seats down laughed, low and relieved, at nothing in particular. I didn't laugh. I was thinking about a resort lobby I hadn't seen yet, and a brother who'd never once asked to see me alone in 38 years. Maya's phone buzzed. She read it, then looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen on her before, somewhere between reluctant and careful.
Colonel, she said.
Your family landed 40 minutes ago. They're at the resort. Your brother's asking to see you. Alone. The lobby smelled like plumeria and floor wax. I stepped off the elevator with Maya 2 paces behind me, still in her flight suit, and I saw him before he saw me. Garrett was sitting on the edge of a rattan bench near the fountain, elbows on his knees, phone face down beside him like it had bitten him. He looked up. He stood too fast. Rachel. You asked to see me? Alone, he said, glancing at Maya. She stays. He didn't argue. That told me something. He crossed the marble floor toward me, and about 6 feet away, he stopped, and then he did something I never expected from him. Not once, not in 42 years. He went down on one knee. Right there, in front of the fountain, in front of a bellhop wheeling a luggage cart, in front of our parents, who I now saw standing near the elevator bank, Eleanor's hand pressed to her mouth, Frank a step behind her with his eyes on the floor. Rachel, please. His voice cracked on the second word. I need you to say something. A statement. Anything. The board meets again Monday morning. If you tell them this was a misunderstanding, family stuff, blown out of proportion, they might not vote. Might not vote on what? Removing me. He swallowed. I'll pay you. Whatever you want. 100,000. 200. I'll wire it tonight. I looked down at him for a long moment. The fountain kept running behind him, water sliding over black stone, and somewhere past the lobby doors a car door shut, ordinary and far away. Stand up, Garrett. He didn't. Stand up, I said again, quieter, and this time he did, knees cracking, a stain of sweat through his linen shirt. You think I did this to you? I said. You scanned a card at an airport and ended my career. I scanned a card because you threw a ticket at my chest in front of 40 strangers with their phones out. I didn't post that video. I didn't cut your security budget from $340,000 a year to $58,000, so your margins would look good for a board that never once asked how. I didn't leave a hole in a substation's control software big enough for someone to walk a hostile actor through it. I kept my voice level, the way I'd learned to keep it level in rooms where raising it got people killed. You did that. All of it. 11 months before I ever touched that ID scanner. Eleanor made a sound behind him, something caught between a word and a sob. I was going to fix it, Garrett said. The budget. Next quarter, once the SUV lease payments, the $81,000 for that Escalade you all wanted, once that eased up. Next quarter. I let that sit. 12 hours ago, I had 30 minutes to keep 400,000 people from losing power because of a decision you made to buy Mom and Dad a car. His face went the color of the marble under his feet. Frank finally raised his eyes. Rachel. Not yet, Dad. Garrett tried once more, softer now, the CEO voice gone, something underneath it that almost sounded like the 14-year-old who used to follow me around the science fair asking how I'd wired the circuit. I've been jealous of you since I was a kid. You know that? Everyone thought I was the smart one, and I used to lie awake terrified they'd figure out I was copying your homework in every way that mattered. I built a whole company just so nobody would ever look at us side by side again. It was the first true thing he'd said since I walked off that elevator. I know, I said. I've known since I was 17, and you were 14, and you turned in my science project with your name on it, and Mrs. Alvarez called you gifted. I forgive you for that, Garrett. I forgave the jealousy a long time ago. Actually, before you even asked. Hope moved across his face like sunrise. But forgiveness isn't a wire transfer, I said. And it isn't a statement to your board. There's a line between helping someone and disappearing so they can keep lying to themselves. I'm not fixing what you built. I'm not spending one more year of my life managing the story you tell about yourself. Rachel, please. Eleanor started forward. That was when Kevin came around the corner from the pool deck, still in his swim trunks, hair dripping, and he didn't look at his father kneeling by a fountain or his grandmother crying into her own hands. He walked straight to me and put both arms around my waist and held on, the way he used to when he was 7 and afraid of the dark in that house on Ridgeline Drive. She's not the bad guy, Dad, Kevin said, not loud, just steady. She never was. I've been telling you that for years. Nobody else moved. Garrett looked at his son wrapped around me instead of him, and something in his face finally, completely broke. Eleanor crossed the last few feet between us, her hand shaking as it closed around my wrist, her makeup gone in 2 dark lines down her cheeks. She looked up at me like she was seeing a stranger standing in her daughter's shoes. Who are you, Rachel? She whispered. Who are you really? I answered her. I'm the same person I've always been, Mom. You just never bothered to look. Eleanor's hand was still on mine. The sun was low over the water behind the Four Seasons pool deck, and her fingers felt smaller than I remembered, papery, cold despite the heat. 19 years, she said. You let us think. I didn't let you think anything. You decided what I was worth without asking me a single question. There's a difference. She flinched. I didn't soften it. Frank stood a few feet back, hands in his pockets, staring at the tile like it owed him an answer. He'd been quiet since Garrett walked off toward the elevators, quiet in the specific way of a man rehearsing something he doesn't want to say. I knew, he said finally. Eleanor turned. Knew what? About Rachel. Not the details. But I knew whatever she did, it wasn't nothing. 14 years ago, she asked me not to ask questions, and I never did. Not because I respected it, because it was easier. Kevin, sitting on the low wall with his knees pulled up, looked at his grandfather like he'd never seen him before. You could have said something. Any Thanksgiving. Any single one. My voice stayed even. That was the thing about the last 2 days. I'd stopped needing it to be anything else. You don't get credit for knowing and staying quiet, Dad. That's not loyalty. That's just quiet. He didn't argue. He nodded once and looked back at the tile, and I let him sit with it. That was the whole punishment, and it was enough. Grandpa. Kevin's voice cracked a little. You knew, and you let them make fun of her at every single dinner? Frank looked up at his grandson, and something in his face folded. I'm not proud of it, Kevin. You should have said something. I know that now. Frank's jaw worked. I've known it for years and never said it out loud until this exact minute. Diane found me an hour later by the Cabana bar, a glass of untouched sparkling water sweating on the counter beside her. She looked 10 years older than she had at the airport. The board voted this morning, she said. Garrett's out. Interim CEO by Friday. I heard. I filed for separation this afternoon. My lawyer says cooperating with the SEC probably keeps my name off the civil suit. Kevin's college fund is in a trust his grandfather set up. That's untouched, at least. She turned the glass a quarter turn, not drinking. I didn't do it for him. I want you to know that. I did it because I have a son, and I'm not going down with a man who cut corners to buy his parents a car. I know why you did it. Does that bother you? No, I said. It should have been done regardless of the reason. She almost smiled. It was the first honest thing to pass between us in 19 years. For what it's worth, she added, the $81,000 for that Escalade came out of a line item marked security infrastructure. That's what the SEC is actually going to care about. Not the car. What the car was pretending to be. I didn't answer that. I didn't need to. Some numbers speak for themselves once someone finally reads them out loud. Kevin caught me at the edge of the property, near the path that dropped down to the beach. He had his phone out, but he wasn't recording. Are you leaving? Not yet. Soon. Can I text you? Like, actually text you. Not just the group thing. You've had my number the whole time, Kevin. I know. I mean, can I text you, and you'll actually answer? I looked at him. 16, jaw set the way his father's used to be before ambition curdled into something meaner, and I understood he was asking me something larger than his words. Every time, I said. I promise. Even from wherever you actually work? The real place. Especially from there. He hugged me, fast and awkward, the way teenagers do when they're afraid of being caught feeling something, and then he jogged back up toward the lobby before I could see whether he was crying. I never gave Garrett an answer about the statement. He'd asked twice more through Diane's lawyer, then stopped asking. Some things answer themselves through silence, and I'd learned that from watching my own father do it for 40 years. I just used it for something worth doing. The sun was dropping fast over the water, that Hawaii kind of fast where gold turns to orange turns to bruised purple in the space of 10 minutes. I walked down to the sand alone. I still had it. Folded into my jacket pocket since the airport, crease soft from 3 days of not throwing it away, the boarding pass. Seat 34B. Economy. The seat he decided fit my budget. I unfolded it once, read the print in the fading light. Roach/Rachel, Zone 5, middle seat, and then I tore it. Not dramatically. Just cleanly, down the middle, then again, until the pieces were small enough that the trade wind coming off the water could take them out of my hand one at a time. I watched them go. White scraps against a sky gone the color of a healing bruise, scattering out over water that, 3 nights ago, had almost gone dark for a million people who would never know how close they came. Blood hadn't made us a family. Respect was the thing that built one, and my family had never once extended me a down payment on it. I didn't need them to. I turned from the water and walked back up the beach toward the lights of the resort, and for the first time in 19 years, I wasn't walking toward anyone's version of me. I was just walking as myself. Self-respect, I'd come to learn, was the quietest form of revenge there was. It didn't need an audience. It only needed to be kept.